part 2 we're gonna start with some more Nintendo Game & Watch games from my collection. And here I have two very old Game & Watch games. Here we have Toss Up, the very first game that was ever released for the Nintendo Game & Watch series, and also the very first game in the Silver series. And here we have Lion, a game from the Gold series. Toss Up was released in the year 1980 and Lion was released in the year 1981. Now, some people might say, hey, Toss Up is actually not the very first game of the Nintendo Game & Watch series. The very first one is called Ball. And that is correct, but it depends on which company distributed / released the game. Because when Nintendo decided to release the Game & Watch games outside of Japan / Asia, they didn't want to release / distribute their games themselves. Instead, they asked companies from each country if they wanna distribute the games for them. And in this case, a company called Mego Corporation, which was a North American toy company, decided to release the Nintendo Game & Watch games. And all those distributing companies were allowed, if they wanted, they could change the box design, they were allowed to change the names of the handheld / of the game themselves on the box, and if they wanted, also on the game itself. And the company Mego was, I guess, the only company which actually took advantage of this option to change the name on the handheld game itself, and actually also the series, because it's not a Game & Watch game, it's a timeout game. And again, the name was changed. This one is called Toss Up. The original name was Ball. And for instance, in a German company called Bienengraber did distribute the Nintendo Game & Watch games for the German and Austrian market, but they only changed the names on the box and of course in the manual, but they never changed anything on the handheld games themselves. And a couple other companies, they didn't change anything on the games or on the handhelds, except for maybe their company logo. So you can find some handheld games that have, for instance, CGL printed on them or anything. But in the end, yeah, this is basically the reason why this game is called Toss Up and why it's a timeout game. Now, what's really cool about, and interesting actually, about the timeout games for collectors is the fact that those games are a lot rarer than the normal Game & Watch Nintendo ball games. And the reason for that is because Mego Corporation went bankrupt in 1982, and by 1983 the company didn't exist anymore. So in the end, those timeout games were only a maximum of 2 years on the market. And that's one of the reasons why those games are today highly collectible and pretty rare and hard to find. And what's even crazier about those timeout games is that if you find the box of, let's say, this game, Toss Up, the box itself is about 10 times more worth, or up to 10 times more worth than actually one of those handheld games themselves. And if you have all complete, then yeah, you have really one of the holy grails in terms of Nintendo Game & Watch games. But anyways, this one is in an okay condition. It has some scratches on it, but what's really sad are those black spots that you can see. And I've searched it a little bit around on the internet, and what I found out was that it looks like the LCD screen starts to bleed, and if this happens, you can't repair those screens. If anything, you can try to replace this screen, and maybe someday I'll try to do that. One idea that I had was Nintendo re-released the Nintendo Game & Watch game Ball a couple years ago and remade those little handheld games, and you were able to buy those games in the Nintendo shop, and today you can find a lot of them on the internet / on eBay. They don't cost that much, and my idea would be to buy one of those and maybe use the screen from the newer version and replace the old one. But I'm not sure if I'm actually gonna do this. But this would be one idea that I have to save this game. But in the end it works, and I'm gonna show you it just in a second. One other thing about those earlier Nintendo Game & Watch games is that normally for all the other LCD handheld games I use those LR or SR44 batteries, but the older ones you should use the LR43. And I have one right here, and you can use the LR44, but I wouldn't recommend it to use them too long or use them all the time. Here's the difference. This is the 43 and this is the 44 battery, and you can see a difference in terms of height. So the LR43 are not as big in terms of height than the LR44. And the reason why I wouldn't recommend it that you play too long with those batteries is that in the end you're gonna apply a lot of pressure to the contacts, and yeah, it's not really good to apply that much stress to those contacts, but in the end it works. And yeah, what you have to do in this game is you have to make sure that the balls stay in the air and you don't drop one of the balls. Now for the controls you have here, left control, right control. Game A, very easy. Game B is a little bit harder. You have 3 balls in the air. You can switch to time, and you can set the time if you want. Now I'm gonna show you a little bit of the game Toss-Up / Ball in action. It's a very simple game, but yeah, for the very first Nintendo Game & Watch game I still think it's a pretty cool game. Not as cool as the Zelda multi-screen which I showed you in part 1, but yeah, for the very first game it's actually not bad at all. And of course, the longer you play, the harder it gets, the faster it gets, and yeah, so on. But I'm gonna drop one so that you can see that, and now I've lost a life. Okay, this was Toss-Up / Ball. And now I'm gonna show you Lion. And here you can also see some advantages. I mean, like mentioned before, 1980 was this released, and this was released in 1981. And you can see that they added the alarm function to this Game & Watch game, and they also added here on the back a little stand. So I can get it out there. So that if you wanted, you could place it right next to your bed or on the table or anything and use the Game & Watch as an alarm clock. It's actually also pretty cool. And yeah, here again I can show you that normally you should use the LR43 or SR43, and it was made in 1981. Now in the game Lion, what you have to do is you have to keep the lions in the cage, because otherwise they start to attack those little guys that you have. Here you have the controls for the left guy up and down, here you have the controls for the right guy up and down. Game A, Game B, same thing like before with Toss-Up, time, and yeah, if you wanted you could set an alarm. And I I missed the first one and lost a life. Lost the second life. It's a lot harder than Toss-Up, yes. And it's not also that easy to play through the camera, but yeah. Just wanna show you those games. I don't wanna make any kinds of high score or anything. Okay, and there I lost the game. Pretty cool. Yeah, a pretty cool handheld game in the end. In terms of gameplay, like with Toss Up, it's a very simple game. It's okay. It's not amazing or anything, but I still think it's a very cool handheld game, and I'm glad that this one is in almost excellent condition. I actually don't know anymore where I got this game and how much I paid for it, but in the end, yeah, in terms of gameplay, like I said, both games are pretty simple, but they're okay and cool. And in terms of collecting, yeah, you can't really go wrong with any Game & Watch game from Nintendo. I know I repeat myself over and over again, but in the end, those Nintendo Game & Watch games are very well made in terms of the materials that were used, in terms of the looks of those games. They look cool, especially, let's say they look very cool in any collection. And in the end, I can only highly recommend those Nintendo Game & Watch games. The only real downside about those games is that today they are pretty expensive and the prices go up and up. But anyways, now we're gonna come to some other handheld or tabletop games that I have. Next, I'm gonna show you a couple of my electronic handheld games from Tiger Electronics, and we're gonna start with this one, Skeet Shot. This is a game from 1987, and it uses two AA batteries. And yeah, for controls, here on the left side you have the button to shoot your weapon, and here with this right knob you can aim. And yeah, you have your on and off switch. Then you can choose between two game modes. And you can also play this with a second player if you want, so it's turn-based if you want to call it that way. And here on the left side you have the off switch, and here you can select if you want to disable the sound or not. So here, if you want, you can choose between one or two players, and with game you can choose between the first or the second game. I'm gonna take the first game, and it's a pretty loud one. And it's also more or less a pretty simple game. And yeah, here it starts with just one disc, and later on there are two discs. Then they also will change their flight path, so they don't fly straight or anything. And you always have two shots, which you can see down here. But since I always, or at least right now, I am hitting every target, so don't need the second shot. But later on, when you have to shoot two discs, yeah, you need two shots, like so. Okay, and yeah, this was basically Skeet Shot. It's okay, it's not really that amazing or anything. I personally bought this one because I had one of these back in the days, and this was the main reason why I wanted to have it for my collection. In the end, most of the Tiger electronic handheld games, they are fun to play, but in terms of collecting value or anything, they are not that sought after. And normally the prices of those Tiger electronic handheld games is not that high or anything, so they are not really that expensive. Surely there are some collectors out there who also like to collect all kinds of Tiger handheld games, but in the end they are not really that expensive or anything. They are cool, they look cool, they are very colorful mostly, and yeah, but not in the same category as, let's say, the Nintendo Game & Watch games. But anyways, we continue now with the next Tiger handheld game. The next one is this one right here, Thunderblade. Again, another handheld game from Tiger Electronics. This one was released in 1988 and it also uses 2 AA batteries. In terms of control, here you have your D-pad, you can fire missiles and bombs. Here you can set the time, you can turn on the handheld. Here you can see your high score, you can turn on or off the sound, and here you have your off switch. The sound actually on this one is pretty loud, so I'm gonna tell you everything about the game right now, and afterwards, yeah, I'll try my best in playing this game. You have 4 stages. Of course, you start with stage 1. In stage 1, you fight against helicopters which come from the right side and also some tanks on the bottom. That's why you have the missiles for all the helicopters and the bombs for the tanks. And only the helicopters will shoot at you. In stage 2, also the tanks start shooting at you. In level 3, there will be also some kinds of, not bunkers, but aircraft, anti-aircraft stations, let's call them like that, will be on the ground and you have to destroy them. And in the 4th stage, you have a boss fight against a giant plane, and if you manage to defeat this boss character, then it will start all over again, but it's getting harder and harder. Okay, this was enough talk. Let's see how far we come in this game. And I've managed to beat level 1, and to continue you have to push start every time you manage to complete a stage. So and those are those anti-aircraft, guns or whatever. Okay, yeah, I was able to manage to clear stage 2. I guess we've seen enough. Yeah, this is Thunderblade, again another handheld from Tiger Electronics. Another one that I wanted to have for my collection because I also had this one back in the days, I bought this one actually while I was on vacation in the US back in the days, and I played it tons in the car while we were driving through the country. Yeah, I think it's actually a pretty cool one. In terms of audio, it's a pretty loud electronic handheld game, but in terms of gameplay, I actually think it's a pretty cool one. In terms of collecting value, again, the Tiger Electronic handheld games are not really that much worth, at least right now. Maybe this will also change sometime in the future. Yeah, but I think if you like Thunderblade on the console, like for instance on the Master System or Genesis, whatever, it's actually not a bad handheld version of the game. So I think it's actually a pretty cool little handheld game from the company Tiger Electronics. But now we come to the next one. The next one that I wanted to show you is this one right here. Another one from Tiger Electronics. Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer. A very cool looking little handheld game from the year 1999. And the game needs 3 AAA batteries. I have already inserted the batteries because this is one of those where you have to unscrew the screw. So to save some time, I already inserted the batteries. Now in terms of controls, you have here your D-pad, then here you have 2 buttons, one for the acceleration and one for special. The special button is used if you overtake or try to overtake other pod racers. Then you have to fight with them to manage your the overtaking in the end. Then here we have the on switch / the start switch. Then here we have a pause button. Here we have a button to turn on or off the sound. Here we have an off button, and here is a reset button, but this one is actually broken off. But I still can reset the game if I want to with a small screwdriver. So let's start the game. It's actually pretty interesting, at least in my opinion. So you start with 300 points. Let's start the game. Now you can you can choose between a small, a medium or a large pod. I'll take a medium. Then you can choose between 3 engines. Let's take B, and then you have 3 special weapons, features, whatever, and I take the clippers. And now you can bet how many points you wanna bet on your pod racer. In the end, if you bet all the 300 credits that you have right from the start and you lose the game, it's game over. If you don't spend all your credits on it, you can still continue your game, and if you come in at second place or anything, then you lose the money. So let's go for 300, and he accepts it. And now let's do some pod racing. Place 15, and we start at lap 1. There we have the first one, and I use the clippers to overtake one opponent. Oh, yeah, I was able to get rid of 2 other ones. But you don't have unlimited clippers, or at least in my case now, so I try to overtake the other ones. I was hit. Now I have to get more speed, and hopefully, cool. Lap 2, place 7. Okay, now I crashed into one of the other ones. Okay, looks like I crashed into a wall or anything. Second place, lap 3, last lap. And first place. Yeah, the sound can get annoying. And did I win? Yeah, I won. And now I've gained 300 extra credits, and now I can continue. It gets harder and everything. Yeah, in terms of gameplay, it's okay, but it's not great, I would say. But in terms of look, I think it's an awesome looking little handheld game. Looks totally cool. And yeah, in terms of collecting, I actually would say, or I would recommend it, because it really looks very cool, especially for a Tiger Electronic handheld game. But it's not an expensive handheld game or anything. In the end, it is one of those Tiger Electronic handheld games. But yeah, I think it's actually a pretty cool one. Okay, but now let's continue with the next one. Next, I thought I'm gonna show you a couple more of my tabletop games. And here we have another Coleco mini arcade tabletop game, VFD game. Donkey Kong was released in 1982. And yeah, again, I think just from the looks of this tabletop game, pretty awesome. The condition of mine is actually pretty good. Some of the decals on the side are slightly sun faded, but they are all on the tabletop, so no decals are missing or anything. And this game also has the instructions on the bottom, on the battery compartment. And the game takes 4 C batteries. Now in terms of controls or button layout or whatever, here we have just an on and off switch, so you can't change any difficulties or anything. Here we have a joystick, left, right, up, down. And here we have the start button, which is also the jump button. Now, yeah, in terms of gameplay, it is simply Donkey Kong, so you try to make it as Mario to the top of the stage. And on the top is of course Donkey Kong, and he throws barrels at you, and he holds his Mario's girlfriend hostage, and if you make it to the top, then you continue to the next stage, because he kidnaps his girlfriend and takes her to the next stage. One thing that is different from the tabletop game to the original arcade game is that, for instance, some of the items that you can collect, like the hammer, in the original version, if you get the hammer, you can destroy the barrels that Donkey Kong throws at you. In this game, you only get extra points if you collect also the hammer, for instance. So this is slightly different. And if you manage to make it to the top in the first stage, in the second stage, there are some white rivets on each floor, let's call it like that. And in the second game, you have to collect all those rivets. Then you have blind spaces, and you have to jump over those spaces in order to progress in the game. Otherwise, if you fall in one of those removed rivet spaces, or you walk even further to the left or the right side of the stage, then Mario is going to fall off and you're gonna lose a life. But anyways, it's better I'm gonna show you now the gameplay instead of explaining how this game works. So next I'm gonna show you Donkey Kong in action. Whew. And there I made it. I saved the girlfriend of Mario. And yeah, now we come to the second level, and in the second level, yeah, I have to remove those rivets first, actually all of them, and then I can save the girlfriend. Yeah, but it's pretty tough, so I don't expect to clear this level or whatever, but let's give it a try. And now this was the sound that I don't have that much time left anymore, so yeah. Whoa. Okay, one last try. Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's a pretty difficult one, like I mentioned before, and I don't know if you can see this in the video right now, but I see it on the screen of my camera. If the screen appears to be flickering, this is just because of the camera, if I'm right, and if this actually is in the video. So just keep in mind, if the screen actually flickers, then this is because of the camera and not because of the tabletop. But in the end, yeah, it's actually a pretty cool game. It looks amazing. Again, it's a very cool piece in terms of collecting, and also I think it's a very cool handheld / tabletop version of the game Donkey Kong. But now let's continue with the next one. And the last game that I'm gonna show you here in part 2 is this one, another Coleco mini arcade tabletop game, Galaxian, from the year 1982, another VFD game. In terms of looks, again, amazing, awesome, because of this mini arcade look. The condition of mine is not the greatest. I mean, here you can see on the decals at those white spaces there are some black spots or whatever. Also here on the top it's not the greatest looking anymore, but at least all the decals are on there. And yeah, here on the bottom you have also the instructions, and the game needs 4 C batteries. Now what's also pretty cool about this tabletop game is that you have basically 4 different game modes and actually 2 different games on it. You have 2 modes for the 1-player version and 2 modes for the 2-player version. In the 1-player version you can choose between the game Galaxian and Midway's Attackers, which is which is basically Space Invaders. And if you play a 2-player game, then you can decide between a short head-to-head Galaxian mode and a long head-to-head Galaxian mode, which is actually pretty cool. And if you play the 2-player mode, the player 2 controls the ships on the top, and if you are player 1, you control the ships on the bottom. But yeah, let's stop talking. I'm gonna show you now Galaxian from Coleco in action. So first we start with Galaxian. Okay, anyways, this was Galaxian. Now I'm gonna show you Midway's Attackers / Space Invaders. Okay, now I'm gonna switch to two-player mode, and I'm gonna show you just quickly the short head-to-head Galaxian, and yeah, with the right stick slash the right with player 2 you are on the top and attacked the other one, and with the left one slash player 1 is down on the bottom. Yeah, basically that was Galaxian, a very cool tabletop game from Coleco. I think it's awesome in terms of gameplay that in the end you have 3 different, or actually 4 different modes if you count the short and the long version of the head-to-head slash two-player mode. But anyways, if you just play alone or just play one player, you have Galaxian and Midway's Attackers slash Space Invaders. So in terms of gameplay, this is an awesome tabletop, and in terms of looks slash in terms of collecting, it's also very awesome tabletop game from the company Coleco.